Today on the Grill Top Experience, we're making back bacon. Once a year at work, they do an amazing breakfast and they always have a theme, whether it be Hawaiian or Mediterranean, and everything for that breakfast is all based on that location. Well, I was standing next to my coworker and he was from Canada, and I joked with him and said, hey, I wonder when they're gonna make a Canadian breakfast. And he said that if we did, there'd have to be a line taking us all to the hospital afterward because we'd go into cardiac arrest. And two, he said it would most certainly have back bacon. And at the time, I didn't know what that was, but ever since then, I've been dreaming about this moment, about back bacon, and I wanted to make it. So now I'm going to show you what it is.
Canadian bacon is usually just cured pork loin, but back bacon adds a little bit extra. It puts on the rib meat here at the bottom. Next up, we're going to make the brine to cure our bacon. Start off with a quart of distilled water. Add 3/4 cup of kosher salt. 3/4 cups of sugar, a tablespoon of black peppercorns, 2 bay leaves, and a tablespoon of garlic. If you're smart, you're going to wait to put that garlic in until you've had enough heat that all the salt and sugar have dissolved, because once you put it on top, you can't see through it. So in this case, I had to boil it to make sure that everything was dissolved. But as soon as it is, it's okay to take it off. I picked up the 6-quart container on Amazon, and I put the link down below in case you wanted to find it, but it's also something that you can usually find at a restaurant supply store locally. So we're going to take the brine that we just made and start to fill it up, and then we're going to add another 3 quarts of distilled water. That brings up our total to 1 full gallon of distilled water. The only problem here is that is way too hot. You can't put your meat in there or it'll spoil, and so what I did instead is I put it out in my blast chiller for a couple of hours to cool off. Now if you don't have one, you could reduce the water and add an equal amount of ice to get the temperatures down. I looked all over to get the right cut of meat to make back bacon. The closest I could find was this bone-in pork loin, which is the right cut of meat, but it means that we need to do a little bit of butchery in order to get it ready for curing. That means we've got to remove the bones. It's a little bit tricky, but I used this and some great beans later on that day. The recipe calls for 3 pounds of pork loin, and so I had to cut this one down to size. But the reality is I wish that I had scaled the recipe instead to cover the full pork loin because the end product was that good. Now that the brine is sufficiently cooled, we can add 2 teaspoons of curing salt number 1. Now we're doing it here instead of at the boiling stage because as soon as you put it in the liquid, it starts to react, and I want that to happen as close to the time that we put the meat in so it can have full effect. Once everything's mixed up, you go ahead and put that pork loin very gently into the brine, being careful to make sure that you don't overflow it and don't make a big mess. Then you'll notice that it started to float, and at that point, it's a good idea to weigh it down with something like a couple of plates and send it down to Davy Jones' locker. Now, any meat that's sitting above the brine won't cure, it'll discolor, and it'll probably go bad. The next step is to put it in the fridge to cure for 10 to 14 days.
So this has been curing in the fridge for about 12 days, and the only thing that I've done is every 3 or 4 days I'd flip the meat over just to make sure that it was curing evenly. Now the last thing to do is I need to take it out of the brine. I'm going to rinse it off to get all of that salt off of it and get it as clean as possible, and then we're going to throw it on the smoker.
My excitement for back bacon meant I made a little bit of a mess when I was pouring off the brine, so do a little bit more careful than I did. Once you've poured off all the brine, it's time to take the meat out, and you're going to rinse off all the spices and seasonings as well as the salt on the outside. That super salty brine can make the meat overly salty if you don't take it off. Then the only thing left to do is to pat it dry and then insert your favorite meat thermometer so that way we can monitor the temperatures while we're away from the pit.
So it's been a while since I had my ugly drum smoker out, and I wanted to give it a try again. I set it for 325 degrees Fahrenheit, and we're hoping that this is going to cook in an hour or 2, but we're going to have to see how long it takes. We'll know that this is done when it reaches 145 degrees internal temperature. So we just hit 145 degrees internal temperature, and it's time to take it off. I can't wait to take a look. Whew. So the only thing left to do now is to let it rest and then put it in the fridge and cool it off so that way we can slice it.
At first, I was a little bit disappointed with the way it looked on the outside, but with like many things, the important stuff is on the inside, and I saw perfectly pink cured ham. The only thing left to do at that point was to cut it into 1/4-inch slices so it would be perfect for the frying pan. Now when you're cooking back bacon, it's not the same as normal American streaky bacon. There's not as much fat or as much water in it, and so you need to cook it quick. You just want to get it hot with just a kiss of color, and that's how you know it's done. Now I'm not sure what makes up a Canadian breakfast, but we do know that they like back bacon, and I figured everybody likes sunny side up eggs, which of course need to go on the plate sunny side down. Then we added a little bit of hash browns and topped it off with a biscuit. And this is a breakfast fit for a king.
So it's finally done and cooked. I'm going to give it the taste test. That's definitely better than any ham that I've had. It's so sweet, salty, with a smoky flavor that from all the applewood that we used. Now I understand why he was so excited about it. If you want to check out more videos, I've cured lots of things. I'm going to put it in a playlist right up here. As always, if you want to stay tuned, don't forget to subscribe.